I was born on the coast in Langlois, Oregon, and my dad was a logger. He was the oldest of 12 children, and my mom was a teenager when they got married. And when I was 6, my parents divorced, and most people in those days moved in with family. So we moved in with my aunt and uncle on their dairy, and then moved back to Wasco after I graduated because I'd made a lot of friends up there, and ended up getting married 2 weeks after graduation. Had 4 children, lived on a wheat farm, and involved in things in my community. I was a Cub Scout den mother for 9 years, and I joke when I give speeches that that's the best job that prepared me for being Speaker of the House. And Sunday school teacher for 18 years. And at that time, my brother-in-law and I went into the hog business, and I ended up having 3,000 hogs in farrowing crates and buildings there at Wasco. Well, when there was the open seat in the legislature and I decided to run for it, part of the reason was that when I had the hog business, I would have these government people come in and inspect my barns, inspect all the medicines I was giving, and they were very arrogant and they were rude to me. And I just thought, well, are they here to help me or are they here to just punish me? Having these experiences with these government agencies was very frustrating to me. And I thought, boy, if I ever get a chance, I'm going to go in the legislature and see if I can change that. You know, kind of a little more bright-eyed and bushy-tailed than was maybe feasible. Then when the open seat came up, because I'd been to law school, I was working in the courthouse as a circuit court clerk, and I filed for the open seat, and then within a few months I had to quit my job to campaign. So I would put a camp cooler and water and fruit and sandwiches and just go door to door all day. So it's a lot more distance in between homes and farms. And some people just, are very happy to have you come by, and other people aren't. The rural areas, a lot of times I would cover those areas by having meeting several people and saying I want to have something at the local Grange Hall, and we'd have a reception there, have a potluck. A lot of people don't understand that they don't need to know everything. I mean, I didn't know much of anything other than agriculture and selling real estate in Portland and Lake Oswego. But I didn't know a lot of things that government does and a lot of things that are all the issues. But I found out that people don't care how much you know as much as if you'll listen. I mean, it's almost over a year that you run for office. And when I won, I couldn't believe I won. And when I got to Salem and went to the Capitol, I hadn't been there since I was in the 8th grade. And I remember the gold seal on the doors. I remember the gold man, of course, and the big Oregon seal as you come in the front door. And I was just in awe of our Capitol and the history and the people that settled Oregon. And I mean, I just loved it all. I just thought it was so great. So obviously when I got there, I was very, very humble to be there. My mentors were the young men that I went in with, Ray Baum from LaGrande and Greg Walden from Hood River. Ray Baum was an attorney, and he had a lot of experience working with people in the legislature. And Greg Walden's father had been a state representative, and Greg had grown up around that with his father, and then he had been in Washington, D.C. So I relied heavily on those two to help me through the process. And they were my young son's ages. And I only had one problem with someone my own age who was sitting on the House floor about the second day we were in session, and another woman that came in with us was talking to him, and we were visiting, and he says, well, I just have one thing to say to you women. I really don't think women should be in the legislature. I think you women should be home in the kitchen baking cookies. And I've never forgotten it. I love to make cookies, but I think I can also be in the legislature. I went into leadership on my fourth term. I became speaker. And I think when my first few terms, I realized that if you're going to manage the process, you can't do that by just being a legislator. You have to be in a leadership role. And I ran for the office by getting my ducks in a row and talking to all my members, would you support me? And I only had one of my members that ran against me and wanted to oppose me. And That was difficult because he also tried to gather some more support on his side. And by the time I was going to be speaker, he and his group of 2 others said they weren't going to vote for me. Well, I wouldn't have the majority then to get the speaker's vote. I had good relationship with Peter Courtney, who is now the Senate president. And he said, if you don't get the votes, I'll bring my caucus with me and we'll vote for you. And Ramona Kennedy, who was the chief clerk then, told me that hadn't been done for 35 years. And obviously, we had a very good working relationship that session. I would like to think that I tried very hard to be nonpartisan and work with both parties. I always managed things by trying to keep everybody happy and be congenial. That sometimes works and sometimes it doesn't. The same man I told you the cookie story about, when I was asking him to support me for speaker, he says, you're not tough enough. And I just flared up and said, oh, really? I've castrated 300 hogs in one day. I think I'm tough enough. Now, I didn't intend that to go any further, but it did, of course. And I always felt bad about that, and I had several friends that were very embarrassed that said, oh, you didn't say that, did you? But I did say it because I don't know how come you have to be tough as a woman to be a leader. You should have good skills for being a leader, but does that always have to be tough? I don't think so. And the next session, we were tied. Never happened in Oregon before. Tied 15-15. That was an experience. And I got elected leader. You aren't majority leader or minority leader, you're just leader of the Republicans. And I'm the first woman that's ever been leader in the House and leader in the Senate. And Kate Brown was leader of the Democrats and I was leader of the Republicans. And we met all through December like 3 times a week with probably, if I remember right, 5 of their members and 5 of ours, and developed a memorandum of understanding. We had to figure out how we would operate the Senate. I began to poll my caucus by phone in the evenings. Who would you support in the Democrat caucus for Senate President? Assuming that if we give them Senate President, we'll take Ways and Means. So we just balance one out with the other. And we'll have a Republican pro tem, but who would you support? And it came down, obviously, that I had a majority support in my caucus for Peter Courtney. Obviously, it felt good to do payback. And we then set about setting up the committees and who'd be chair of Ways and Means and who would be chair of the committees. And we just alternated those. And then Kate Brown and I were co-chairs of the Rules Committee. And the Rules Committee is where a lot of final stuff goes in, and when you have the sine-die bill. And I always say that I liked that session because the Democrats couldn't get their agenda and the Republicans couldn't get theirs. Everything that passed the Senate had to have bipartisan support. It was bipartisan from there on. It had to be. And I think maybe we should someday be just nonpartisan. I think it would be more productive for Oregonians. I really do. The first time that I realized there was a difference, because I was from east of the Cascades, the Senate president was east of the Cascades, the media says, oh, they started interviewing us. Oh, we've got rural leaders now. What's that going to mean to urban Oregon? And I'm thinking to myself, what are you talking about? We have all these urban leaders forever. And we complain about what you do to us in Eastern Oregon, and nobody in the media cares about that. So why are you saying such a big deal about us being rural legislators? There's not enough rural people to get done what they want. And if they don't make friends with urban legislators and ask them for help, they're not going to get it. I would have never gotten some bills killed that I killed if I hadn't made good friends with an urban legislator in Portland and gave her some votes. And she helped me kill some bills that were bad for us in Eastern Oregon. To me, politics in the 21st century is vitally important for young people to be involved in and to be aware of and to be understanding who's running, and don't make your decision by television ads or newspaper ads. When you're running for office, you're going to put your best foot forward and say that you're the best and your opponent's the worst. And I have a rule of thumb. If all they're going to do is tell you how bad their opponent is, then don't vote for them. I want them to tell me why they're so good that I should vote for them, not the other guy's bad.